will you pass that?
I'm not sure we're gonna need them all. Okay, great. So we're being audio, video recorded. There are no members of the public present for comment. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, that carries unanimously, no dissent. We're gonna do I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes for August 23rd and hold the minutes for August 16th and the 6th.
So
Okay, and that carries unanimously, no dissent. We're gonna move to, right into an overview and discussion of the capital request for DPW transportation for FY20 and beyond. Mike, what we'll do, Mike and Rob, hey, Peter. Record reflect Peter Kaiser's joined the meeting. Roll call is Peter Kaiser, Richard Hussey, Nat Lowell, myself, Stephen Welch, Christy Kickham, Matt McEachern.
Peter. That's okay.
Peter, I'm sorry, I got architects on my
That's
mind.
a positive.
Mike, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just roll right into the FY20 requests, and then we'll hit out years.
okay.
And with that, the floor is for you and Rob.
All right. The first project that you have in the packet is the intermodal transportation center. There's a form provided and some backup material. The cost estimate was derived from Desmond Associates, and that's you see a breakdown in the packet of where the 22 million came from. Their bottom line was 21,800,000 and change. There's also some floor plates and stuff like that to show what that idea was, what that funding would pay for. And I can answer any questions about that project.
Before you take questions, could you just, maybe you or Rob and or Libby, just give us a little bit of a breakdown, give us some of the background on work group and how this developed and so on and so forth?
Sure, should I leave that to you, Libby? Do you want to take the
Sure. So there is a work group that's working on this, and actually, I don't know that this is a go-ahead really for 20. Right?
It's a project we had talked about, so I just thought I'd just put it in the packet for evaluation if it was on the radar.
I think we're not exactly close to being in town agreement that this is going ahead right at the moment, so.
Okay, so I just want to, so for the sake of time, because Mike, one way or the other, this would be something we're going to want to dig into deeper. So I think I would suggest that, and actually any of these that are not likely a deliverable this year, when you come up to them, identify them as perhaps not deliverable this for FY20.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of prioritize, push those to the back.
Okay.
So that if we do have time to talk about them, we can, and then we'd start with the intermodal as maybe even something that would, if it were to move forward, we'd want to have you come in and we discuss it in detail, because we'd want to get some more backup. If town manager's not going to recommend we move forward on it, I don't want to take a lot of time talking about something right now. However, if we have the time at the end, let's talk about it so it's not a foreign concept.
Okay.
As an out-year project. Peter?
If I may, just being as one person of the committee, more representing maybe myself as a citizen, I have worked in the past with Desmond Associates. I take everything that they put together, it's spot on. They've actually done work for me at the club, believe it or not. I would be bold to say that if we, the town, or this committee, do not take action, positive action, on anything relevant to parking and transportation, we've got to be part collectively of a solution, not part of a problem. Understanding there's a lot of moving parts, there is a select board, there's management administration, there is committees, there are private citizens who are creating businesses on the island, but we have to, I'll be very bold again, say be part of a solution. And I hate to see this committee not get engaged in a potential solution and at least have a feeling or understanding that we either accept potentially this is a solution going forward, because to push it in the back burner is only pushing the can down the road. And I, for one, am tired of pushing cans down the road. You have an expert who has been engaged by the town, who does big jobs around the country. I have involvement with this company off island with big jobs. This is minimal, but we have a big problem, and I've not seen one solution really come forward. So, once again, I'll stop. We need to do something like this.
Thank you. Point well taken. Nat, before you.
No, I'm not even gonna say anything.
Libby, is the, I just want to this is for understanding, is one of the reasons that this isn't recommended as a current year request is because there are other moving parts in terms of the plan downtown?
There are other moving parts with this particular property.
Right.
With Harbor Place, there's been two groups working on this. There's been kind of a parking work group, which has individuals from the planning board, select board, and some other staff on it. And there's a different negotiating work group with the Harbor Place owners,
Yeah.
which is in discussions about the use of the property. And I would say at this point, this is possibly not, this needs a lot more work before it can be presented to the voters.
Okay, so, and Peter, just before you comment again, the concept here, I'm not making a qualification of any sort on the project itself. I'm simply trying to prioritize and organize our time so we can go through the list of projects that are likely going to be requested this year. And if a project is something that, certainly this is not in its infancy in any way, shape, or form. I'm not suggesting we don't support it. I'm not suggesting we don't need as a community and as a citizen oversight and recommendation group to be moving forward on things. But I'm just saying with respect to this morning, as opposed to Mike coming back in during this budgeting season and giving us more information perhaps as the other processes that need to happen mature that Libby spoke about. So I just want to be clear in what it is I'm trying to accomplish, that's all.
And my only comment is, Libby, is I understand that this is one site, this is one getting together both with private and public citizens and the town. There are other sites that we should explore, whether it be Washington Street, across Kitty Corner, across the way, someplace where we can put an edifice that can handle more than what we have currently. If you can't negotiate, if we can't negotiate, because there's always two sides of a story, then move on. But I think posturing and taking time to posture, not going forward, we're doing the wrong thing for our community. So I think we should at least explore other ways. There's more ways to provide parking, and we own a lot of dirt. And I look towards you as a part of our select board. Think out of the box, be progressive, don't be obstructionist. I had a lot of coffee this morning.
Red
So-
Bull, I think.
Peter's points are all well taken, and we will pick this up again.
Good,
It
thank
will
you.
be this budget season.
Just my voice.
And we will now move on to the parking improvements at Two Fairground and Town Pier.
We're going just as long, just as emotional. For the, and Rob, feel free to chime in at any point on this. This is for improvements, resurfacing improvements at both the Town Pier parking lot and the Two Fairgrounds parking lots, just the parking lots themselves. There's a breakdown of the amount of funding being requested, the $1 million. That, most of it's resurfacing work, and then there's some funding in the budget for drainage improvements.
I will mention that we are working actively with, at the Town Pier parking lot, we're at the 37 Washington Street parking lot. We have partnered with the Land Council to bring to bear some water quality improvements. At the same time, recognizing that there's been some attempts in the past to, let's say, repair the parking lot. So we're stepping back and looking at the parking lot redesign. It's very likely going to incorporate comments and input from all the neighbors and the public in general. So we're going to start public information sessions similar to other projects we've taken on this fall. And with regard to the 2FG site, obviously that's a parking lot that's currently being used and very highly utilized, mostly with commercial vehicles. There's sort of a combination of things happening here that you'll see laid out between Wheat Drive improvements parking lot improvements and driveway to the 2FG campus. And so it's sort of broken out separately so that we can continue to make strides at improving those areas.
So is this a new request? This is not anything to do with prior year requests that were pushed forward?
There is some funding that went in a previous town meeting appropriation for design work. This is all the construction part of it. I believe we're gonna utilize some of the historic funding for design work, any design work that's needed. So we'll use those accounts for that.
Any other comments, questions? Peter?
Just a question, Robin, you, or Mr. Burns, the undergrounds, all the catch basins, all that would go through separators and whatnot
Yes.
prior to going into.
We haven't got into design work yet,
Okay.
but, you know, there's a lot
It'll
of
be done
things
right
to
away.
consider. We have high groundwater, we have tidally influenced groundwater.
Yeah. Well, that's visible here.
As much as possible, we're gonna try to take a look at newer green infrastructure. Could be vegetated swales, nutrient removal, those sort of possibilities. So we're also trying to recognize, you know, sea level rise and climate change.
Rob, Mike, maybe Libby. So I guess what I would like to suggest is that you guys expand the request to include, if it's required, or will be required in the near future, some type of security for fencing, things you commonly see in public parking areas, and lighting. If we're gonna be, is this just a resurfacing, or is this an expansion of the parking area and a relayout?
It's gonna be a complete,
Redo?
yeah.
Okay, so
complete redo.
just to suggest that let's add to the package, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the highest standard in terms of layout, but lighting that accommodates the use, security fencing that accommodates the use, I would suggest we have both of those. And then the other thing I would ask is there a provision in terms of layout, if there's gonna be some type of, in the, you know, 1 to 5 year useful life cycle of this part of a facility, paid parking, some type of kiosk location, or are we kind of planning a little space somewhere so we don't?
I would say, first off, right now there are no plans, certainly for paid parking here. If that changes, you know, there could be, I would think, some fairly minimal investment into accommodating that. Back to security and lighting, I don't anticipate any fencing or any kind of different approach than what's there currently. Maybe replacing what's there with brand new, but not looking to turn this into some kind of a different feel or look. And certainly lighting is very sensitive to the neighbors there. If anything, we'd probably be looking at eliminating lighting and relying on either ambient street lighting or building lighting that's there.
What about ground lighting?
No, I think we're relying on improvement of surfaces to keep people from, you know, tripping and falling, as opposed to, you know, shining a huge light that's not useful for many hours overnight and really causes a lot of chaos with the neighbors, whether it's them or people trying to rent.
So no, 1 second, Nick. So no requirements from a general liability standpoint with respect to lighting or anything. I'm not suggesting we light up the night sky with this, but on the other hand, if we're gonna put down, if we're gonna invest $1 million in stormwater and new surface, I just would like to think that we're working in some planning of what's gonna happen next with the area, with keeping in mind if there are any requirements for lighting or security for a parking lot, or, you know, under the kind of an attractive nuisance thing the town is putting in a facility, do we have an obligation? I don't know, I'm just suggesting that if those things are things that come into play, that we budget for it in the request, that's all.
So what I'll tell you is the same thing I tell neighbors to these municipal parking lots. You know, there's sort of been a change in thought through the years about screening out these kind of facilities from everybody else. We get, you know, it's not necessarily the best thing to stare at with all these cars parked, but at the same time, you know, we also need to make sure that they are safe in that they're not screening people from from themselves. You know, we want to make sure there's no, you know, increase in potential for sexual assaults in a very, you know, isolated and.
Right, you wanna maintain a
screened
view
out
corridor.
There needs to be view corridors, and respectfully try to understand, you know, the difference between screening from the street and screening from the houses, and trying to be respectful. I think for the large majority of that, people understand it's a high turnover lot for the most part, and then you get from sort of there's a difference from the town pier side of it to sort of the Fayette side of it, where it's sort of right in people's backyards. So we're gonna work with the neighbors, I think, and respect their opinions as they have to live with this facility. I don't think we're gonna see a change in lighting, but we certainly will look at lighting to make sure that it's, we'll call it adequately lit, and that's gonna be subjective.
And I want to just clarify one thing, then Nat, and then Peter. I was thinking of the two fairgrounds, because it's a one-line item, and it shows the town pier, so Fayette and two fairgrounds. And
Two fairgrounds is definitely we're looking at lighting for that.
Yeah, that's the one that I had in mind when I was making those comments, not so much
I had a
that.
feeling that's what you
Nat, and then
I just
Peter.
wanna ask, Rob, how many spaces are we adding downtown here? And I think I asked you this a while ago.
It's premature to ask, because I don't
Okay.
have a design yet. but-
Okay.
But can I
But we-
just jump in on that?
Sure.
It's not gonna be a lot more.
No, but there's gonna be a
because the-
few though, right? I
Well, there
think.
probably will be, but it is premature to say, because the parking spaces now are nowhere near the
Right.
standards that they ought to be. And that is a tight lot, people don't park properly, there are a lot of dented doors and bumpers and all kinds of things, people park near where they're not supposed
But
to
we're-
right now.
It's, I would say it's really early to talk
Okay,
about it,
okay.
only because who knows what we're gonna
Well,
find.
we're getting rid of all the spikes in the wood, right?
I'm anticipating that we're going to
That's
find.
the biggest issue.
There's potential encroachments from neighbors that we will be able to potentially utilize those spaces, you know, it's early.
Yeah.
It's really early.
All right,
But it's all good stuff to bring up.
okay.
Peter?
Is the intention to continue to passively manage the lot, where we don't avail any sort of security or personnel or?
I would say it's above my pay grade.
Okay, so I would, if I may, Rob, what I would suggest is, I think once again, we have to take an approach where we're not passive, we have to manage, administrate. There's a potential revenue center. Right now, I'll be very bold again to say it's mismanaged because it's not managed. You have people that park there overnight who are off island. They shouldn't be there. If it was a managed lot, you can control who uses it. You can free it up at nighttime. I would also look at it as a person who loves leverage. Use it as a leverage plan when your conversation with Harbor Place. Think out of the box. You have land, both of those sites have the ability to bring in revenue. How many projects do we get a chance to vote on that have revenue attached? If we don't see that, and we don't grab that ring, it's gonna go around. So I think your plan is good as long as, I know you could go subterranean here, you could keep out of lines of sights. We'd probably be doing the same thing at Harvey Place. But we have to think about all of the things. Managing a lot, I'm an operator, I manage a lot. It can be done, but you need people. I attacked the school for mismanaging their parking because it was passive, and they had kids running around.
So,
Manage
I don't want Libby.
is not a bad thing. Passive management is mismanagement.
Libby?
Some of this is above my pay grade also. However, it is a little managed. There are parking permits required for commercial vehicles, and they are not allowed to park there overnight, certain times of the year.
right.
But you're absolutely right about the people. We don't have the people to manage this
Understood.
properly, and the
That should be part of the
impact,
plan.
I don't disagree. I have been mentioning all along for quite a while that ought to be a paid parking lot. However, if there's no paid parking in the downtown, then it's a problem with use. So we have to have a coordinated effort with the downtown and this lot and other lots before we say we're gonna make this one paid.
We need a parking czar. Nat, did you have
No,
something?
I'll
I
get
was
into
just gonna
that
say,
business.
Peter,
I can retire.
just a quick little thing with Peter's, Red Bull this morning, is, it costs money to manage.
Understood that.
We're not charging anything. I think we were gonna, I think the plan is to, and this is a select board issue, but not getting off track, but I think we're gonna be charging those work trucks someday, a fee, $1,000 a year, something. But what Libby said, they're out at 2 fairgrounds at a certain time of year.
Agreed.
That's my issue.
And they pay a fee now
They do?
to get the permit.
Oh, I didn't even know they
Yeah.
had one yet.
It's I
Oh.
don't remember exactly how much it
Oh,
is, it's around
I thought
$400
it
or
was still free.
$500.
Okay, good. Well,
For
then
commercial
we
only.
see that, we've done something, because it was 0 a couple of years ago. So, my point is, my biggest issue right now is to take baby steps to keep them out of the old AMP lot, keep them out of our lot at 37 when they're not supposed to be. That's the first step, because I know which companies stay at the AMP lot in the summertime, in the summer, and don't get
Understood.
towed.
Well, it's not our
That's
land.
unbelievable. No, but they're, if they're staying in the AMP lot in the summer, they're certainly not going to fairgrounds. They're gonna go to the town lot and stay there, you know, as an alternative, you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
we don't manage that, so.
I understand, but it's not free. I mean, it's gonna cost us more money than the permits to have a person managing that. So I see this as going in the right direction, but slow.
He can do an analysis.
I'm just, it should cost a good amount to park on this island,
Yeah.
People are making a lot of money leaving trucks here, going back and forth.
I don't think it should be any more than you pay off island for a year-round permit.
Be the only thing that
Personally.
isn't.
Thankfully, we
That's
are
how I
not the
feel
group
about it.
that's gonna be making
Correct.
that determination.
So I don't want
And
them
and
to.
it's not gonna happen
on
this
us
morning.
over there. We got a lot of
Yeah.
cars parked in Hyannis.
But
It's hard to-
we gotta-
Be careful what you wish for.
We gotta rein it in, guys. So, this is all good discussion, but it's not something that we can
It's not
address
our
this
issue.
morning,
Yeah,
so and it's not, a lot of it's stuff that we aren't going to be addressing, as a committee in any event. I just wanted to, is it fair to call these parking refurbishments as opposed to, improvements? I'm just looking at this title and I'm thinking, words matter to me, and just, when I read parking improvements, I'm thinking of why, we're gonna improve the facility, it's gonna bring it all up to super modern standards. Does it matter to you what it's called if I refer to it as refurbishments?
No,
Okay,
no. I've been married this long because I stopped picking paint colors a long time ago.
nice, nice. Happy wife, happy life. Orange Street Bike Path?
Thank you. Yeah, there's some material in the packet after the forums. The ask is 2.5 million, which is a little bit different than what's in the schedules in the CIP chart. And that's only because we just recently got an update from VHB. VHB did a feasibility study on alternatives for improving the corridor, but between the Milestone Rotary and downtown. This was funded through Remain Nantucket, so the town's partnered with them to do this feasibility study. They've cost out a section for Orange Street only. There's a map in there, your packet, that kind of shows you some of the improvements, but it's in a profile of what these improvements would be. But essentially, it's adding expanding the cross-section now that's around the Henry Jr., Spruce Street, Goose Pond area, and just carrying that down to the Milestone Rotary, widening out the road to about 30 feet from curb to curb. That would give you 2 travel lanes and then 4-foot shoulders on either side for bicyclists to use, and eliminate those neck-down areas through the Marine Home Center corridor. It's, again, Remain was a great partner on this. It's great to have a very accurate cost on this from VHB. And that not only is the construction built into this request, but the estimated design, and it's been incorporated in this as well. And it assumes some right-of-way acquisition costs as part of that design fee.
And the pole issue as well?
Yes.
Okay.
There's still some utility engineering that needs to go on, but at least we have that costed out for this particular corridor.
Mike, just for informational purposes, so we have an attachment that's labeled Figure 1, and it indicates short-term alternatives 1 and 2. And then we skip to 3, which talks about alternative 2. So I'm just trying to figure out, with respect to the actual dollar request of 2.5, are you proposing what's in blue? Or I'm sorry, what's in solid blue as opposed to what's dotted blue? And if so, which alternative is that in the discussion you've been having?
The solid blue on this map, which is between Spruce Street and I'm gonna call it West Creek Road.
Yeah.
That's the tight corridor, that's where the bike lanes right now end, and it's, they show right now in these dotted areas, existing bike way. There should be existing bike lanes. But yes, that corridor, and that's meant to show, alternative one on this was an approach that just fixed one side of the road, if I can say it that way, provided just one bike lane on the north side of Orange Street.
Okay, so as opposed to bogging you down in that, we can just
Yeah.
cross alternatives off of this, and the request is for the improvements to the corridor shown in blue.
Exactly, and the requested improvements are alternative two, which is widening out the road on both sides, not just one side. Alternative one was just one side of the road, which is probably not gonna be acceptable.
And
Having
this
one
is,
bike
this is
lane.
the number two.
Correct.
Yeah, so figure 2 that's missing was alternative 1.
Okay, so on our sheets, figure one, the title should just be short-term, not alternatives 1 and 2, and on the next page, it's figure 3, which is just figure 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it the preferred alternative.
Okay, so that's, because otherwise we're looking at documents and we don't know what we got. Okay, great.
Real quick.
Peter, please.
Why short term? Why is it labeled short term?
The longer term is essentially what's been called the Harbor Walk proposal, and that's using really the north side of Washington Street and assuming that all of that was available. I'm gonna call it a parkland or something
Okay.
required by the land bank, to where we can have an off-street bike path along that corridor. That's very long range.
So this section that we're talking about for widening the road on Orange Street, that's long term. That's gonna stay that way.
Well, the short term, we're calling Orange Street the short term, which is just bike lanes, correct?
But that's not gonna change going forward. Orange Street, no.
No, there is obviously this boardwalk idea of going behind all these land uses along the harbor front. That's very, very, very
Okay.
long range.
All right. Interesting.
But getting more possible.
Yes, I'm not saying it's impossible, no, it is absolutely possible.
I didn't think it was possible in our lifetime.
Peter?
In that short-term area, Mike, do we own any side of the road beyond where the road is now? In that stretch?
Well, the town owned properties, that what's highlighted in yellow and kind of grayed out is
Yeah.
what's considered public property.
And there's no way for us as a town to take that section of land, like, for example, in front of Marine Home where Henry's, and spread it east and west?
That's what we'd be looking to do as part of this.
And how much do we gain, how much, is there any taking, or is there sharing the land, is there? Or if we needed more land, could we ask or make trades, or to get more?
I'm sure there could
more real
probably be
estate?
trades, but what we would, if it's private property, we would ask for an easement. That's how
Yeah.
we would acquire the property on private land.
How far does Marine Homes parking lot, is there any encroachment, or is that all theirs?
The town owns a good portion of that layout in their parking lot, but there would be some property impact, slivers of impact.
Jason?
So I would agree that this is, I like that it's high priority. A little further, it says supports strategic plan. This supports the select board's strategic plan in two different ways. We're trying to, and I bring this up every meeting, reduce single-use automobile by 6%. We're trying to do a lot of different things to do that. And Orange Street is one of the big ones. Nobody wants to ride on Orange Street. I'm fine with it, but I do it every day. I'm not nervous about it, but no one's gonna really ride on Orange Street. Having a 3 or 4 or 5 foot lanes on each side, and you feel safe, and you feel safer with Marine Home Center in that area. That corridor is a big missing piece. So this is short money to do what the solutions of getting people to ride bikes, walk. The other way this supports our strategic plan is one of our goals this year was to try to get more walking and biking from Mid-Island to downtown, and really focusing on that. We're just gonna pick 1 or 2 ways to do that, but this is one of them. And Remain has been working on this for a year. They've kind of spearheaded this to push it forward so we can make quicker decisions. So I'm very bullish on this. I think there's been a lot of work
I like that.
done on this part. And then the next part, down the road will be trying to figure out Washington Street, what we can do in short term. But Orange Street's important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? All right, so I actually would like to, if there are, bear with me 1 second. So we've got,
Down the road now.
yeah, we're gonna jump down. Mike, can we hit road improvements maintenance at 3.5? And then just to forecast to you guys, we're gonna jump to Walwinet. We got some people who are gonna be leaving, I just wanna hit these things before, and then we'll go back into sequence.
So I was going to handle the maintenance part of it, and I'll just jump over and say, the roadway improvements for 3.5 is basically a reboot of last year's ask based on the attached spreadsheet that lays out in price format, essentially the projects identified through the pavement management program and current unit pricing. We ended up with $1 million for, we'll call it, island-wide roadway repairs. And as you know, most of our roadway improvements are a combination of
Page 13 of 30.
town funding and Chapter 90 program funding. And the Chapter 90 program funding is something that we are looking at as well, but we're looking at funding levels around 675,000 roughly annually. So we're looking at basically a combined potential roadway improvement project budget of 1.6 annually. We're doing a very, what I would call underdoing pavement mill and overlay projects this year that are programmed, and we just can't go far enough. There's also a lot of other activity going on that's subsurface work, some private, some public, that's keeping us from being, or even being able to act on a more aggressive program. But I think in the very short term, there's going to be a lot more pavement opportunities, and clearly our pavement management program is identified. There's lots of work to be done. The funding levels at 3.5 are far more appropriate than the 1 that we're getting currently, and that's where we're at.
Thank you, Rob.
Good backup.
Thoughts?
I just have a quick question
No.
for Rob. Rob, how do we increase Chapter 90 funding? What triggers that?
We're
Is that
only,
the
so
amount of roads,
we're a percentage of,
state?
there's a formula, and it's based on miles of roads, publicly accepted roads. It's based on population, and it's based on employment. So we are, the town manager and myself are looking at ways to make sure that our numbers are accurate. It has a lot to do with the numbers that get reported. And we working with planning and with Roads and Right-of-Way Committee to do a comprehensive sort of
Private, public road, yes,
analysis.
list.
Yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been done in a couple, I think 15 to 20 years.
That's awesome. So that's how this works. Why is it? It's like scary, 600 grand. That's nothing. Nothing. You can't even go to work for 600 grand for a day for paving.
All right, so other questions for Rob? Rob, if you flip to sheet backside of your roadway maintenance, it's actually the backside of the multi-use path. I think mine's printed a little differently than yours. It's the, it looks like it's your pavement management plan or a tear sheet from the spreadsheet.
Yep.
You've got, I just want to get a handle on just the processing of the dollar amounts. So you were looking at FY 18 3.5. We approved 900,000. FY 19 you were looking at $1 million, and we approved. FY 19, I'm sorry, you were looking at 3.5 and we approved $1 million. So look, I'm just trying to understand, is there a shortfall in the FY 18, 19 work that was completed based on this outline versus what was funded? And is that rolling forward to FY 20? What's going to be on your list? Where do these go and what's going to be on your list for the FY 20 request?
The 20 list would be redone, depending on how far we get this year. Right now, I mean, these were last year's placeholders of justifying the cash. we got $1 million, so with that, we're supplementing the Chapter 90 funding into that, and we're taking on the list that we presented in front of Select Board a week ago. It's basically a section of Cliff Road, a section of Hummock Pond Road, and 2 small crossroads. So it's, again, back to what Nat said, it's barely anything.
As a portion of the total list, or due to the fact of costs?
No, as a portion of the total list.
Okay.
You know, if we're looking at a strenuous program of, you know, being able to come out and do, let's say, the bottom, the fiscal 19 paving projects that are listed there. And those are almost all, except for Tom Nevers was reclaimed, they're all mill and overlay projects, which are fairly, you know, easy to execute. And that is based on last year's unit costs. I don't believe it changed dramatically for this contract, but my point is the funding level needs to be at least at 3.5. They're gonna continue to increase, which is why we forecasted out, you know, that annual increase, I think around 3% per year.
Thank you. Peter?
A question, Rob, in a perfect world, does the local contractor have the ability to put all this paving down?
I would say yes, but selfishly, that would be really focusing on the municipality, because there's only so much there's so many windows of opportunity. What I have come to realize now here is, you know, our shoulder seasons are really the only time that we can largely occupy these areas. So then that leaves summer for school properties and other properties that are not necessarily under the highest use time. Also, there's a lot of private work that's still going on through the summer. So I think there's still plenty of room for people to get things done. Maybe less room for the private stuff to be done during our peak seasons. But, hey, I mean, that's a change.
Thank you.
Richard?
Just point of clarification on this sheet that you're looking at. How many of these projects were done in 2018, if any?
I would say virtually none. Surfside was the only thing that comes to mind. The Tashima Lane to Bartlett Farm, that was done.
Milk Street.
Milk Street, yeah.
So the rest of it is gonna roll forward as part of along with
The project list gets revisited annually. So this list is last year's list.
Yep.
So as you would definitely see the Milk Street Surfside fall off, and you would see some of these others get shuffled around.
When would we see that list?
At the end of the season, gearing up for next year.
And your end is just
I mean,
calendar-wise?
so the other part of that puzzle is that right now we don't have a pavement management contractor signed up. They did their analysis and updated the plan last year. We need to get them back under contract, come back in to do an update to their analysis. They basically would go through the streets annually to look for deterioration, to match what they're physically witnessing versus what their theoretical curves are showing them. So we sort of balance that back and forth to get a score for each segment of road that we look at. So we would bring them in typically in the fall, have them look at the roads again, and then develop the plan based on what we're able to accomplish through the season and then what we're trying to get for next year.
So just in terms, not a set in stone or set in tar list, but an intended list, when would that process be completed to the extent that we'd be able to get a list of FY20 intended work to be funded with the 3.5?
I would hope by January.
Okay. Does that work for you guys? Okay, I think we need to attach a list. But any of these things that we're doing, to the extent that we can, Rob, and I understand that some of this is just beginning, so you don't have stuff in the pipe to necessarily work through, like with the roof lists and the other facility management lists. We're still developing a program to determine what's gonna be on the list. Whereas this, it seems like it's a little more mature and we'd be able to get that information. So we'll follow up for a FY20 list, at the end of the year. Pavement list.
Logistics.
Okay, great. And then if we could jump to Walwinet Road Shared Use Path, please. And that's page 27 in the packet. They're not all legal, but some of them are. Not all of them
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this project on the cost breakdown shows that the requested amount is $80,000. That represents a 20% match to a grant through the Federal Lands Access Program, which is a flat grant through Federal Highway. There was a grant awarded last year of the total design cost of $354,000. The 80% would be funded by the grant, the 20% was to be funded through a local match, and this amount, now that we know that we got the grant, would represent the local match. This is obviously rounded up from the $70,800, but if this is approved, then I believe this is all contingent on executing an agreement with Federal Highway to actually proceed with getting an engineer to survey and start working on the permitting and design of this project. So if this is approved, we would have a local match, and then we could execute the agreement with Federal Highway and get started with the project. But the point is that 80% of this is being funded through Federal Highway.
Okay, thank you. Just for informational purposes, Mike, on those topics, is this something you're proposing that if there's no grant, the work doesn't proceed, or you're proposing we seek funding, and if we get the grant, great, if we don't, we still proceed with the design?
The grant's been awarded.
It has been awarded?
So 80% is there, it's the 20% is where the missing part of this. We were hopeful that it would be a private contribution for this, that hasn't materialized. So the way this would materialize is through an appropriation from the town to.
The 80?
The 80,000, correct.
Okay, sorry, that's what I was, thank you, Peter. Okay, great. Questions? Peter?
For construction funds, is there any grant anticipated for that?
I was asked by Federal Highway to apply for a second grant this year, and I plan on doing that and working with the town manager on signing off on that grant application. That would be for $1 million of this.
2.36.
Exactly. We're told that a phased approach to implementing this would be acceptable for grant purposes. So we anticipate on applying for that, and we're told that we can quote-unquote bank these grant funds until they're needed.
Okay.
So right now, the $283,200 to 80%, that's banked right now. That's just waiting on the local match. And we can carry that forward through 1 or 2 fiscal cycles. That would be the routine for this second grant. If we are awarded the $1 million for that grant, we just bank that until it's needed. Or we have some other match to actually do the construction in whole.
And then appropriate the difference, the 1.36.
Exactly.
Any other questions? I have Nat?
Can we get a Rachel or Melissa to match that? I'm just asking, talking to them all the time.
I
Is
believe it
that
would be-
legal?
Not
She's
downtown.
She's not there anymore.
Oh, Melissa's not, that's right, I forgot, so, but whatever.
I'm sure they're very supportive
knows what
of
the checkbook is.
projects. Maybe that doesn't align with their improvements for downtown, which is more aligned with their mission.
Yeah.
But there's, again,
This
private
is the-
contributions that could be
There's
there. just
3 of the
haven't
most
materialized.
dangerous roads in the islands.
A lot of money and we'll win it.
That's true.
It is.
Fargo Way, a lot of money down there. Mike, so what's the layout of Walnut? We talked about this at Planning Commission, but I didn't know we were, abandoning a real bike path.
Mhm.
Because that's probably like $10 million and bridges and frogs and all kinds of stuff. So what are we, What are we doing here? This is interesting. As far as.
This project? What
No,
is-
as far as like, what's the layout of Walnut Road? I mean,
I'm sure it's
obviously we have
very-
wetland issues on one side.
Exactly.
A little bit,
Exactly.
so this could end up being better this way to meander the road around to make the lanes work. Which I'm
Uh,
sure that's what's gonna end up happening.
Rebuilding the road wasn't part of this pricing. It was basically adding a
Just add.
multi-use path to a side of the road with a buffer.
Okay.
And knowing that there would be wetland impacts, but that still needed to be quantified. It needed to be reviewed to see what replication was necessary, see if it was permittable by the Concom. Once we had those quantified, then you can cost that out to see what the good news is the Conservation Foundation is a huge stakeholder in this, and perhaps we can coordinate with them on any type of mitigation that's necessary, and there'd be some kind of cooperation for easements to replicate any type of impact to wetlands.
That's great. Okay.
Thanks. Mike, a couple questions for you. This is just a standard multi-use path, what we do, Cape Cod berm, whatever, along the side, standard widths, nothing special. Nothing.
There could be a reduced width, it was acceptable, a standard multi-use path is 10 feet wide.
Yeah.
If it's impacting any type of structure or wetland feature, you can narrow it down as,
Well,
to 8 feet,
Okay.
so you reduce your impacts theoretically.
Okay.
But for the most part, yeah, it's gonna be standard.
Okay, just for general information, because it'll come up. And then, Libby, in just one sec, is this, two more questions. Is the grant, forgive me, because I lost it in the numbers, what's the total grant amount?
The total grant amount was $283,200.
200 grant. Okay, and is that a use it or lose it grant? And if it's a lose it, what's the timeline? Like, we need to act on it this fiscal year?
I'm told that there's flexibility with this, and it can go over a couple of fiscal year cycles.
Okay, and then,
I don't know beyond that. It may not be, if this goes 5 to 6 years. It may
no,
not
no,
be
no,
that.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
That's just relative to my follow-up question, which is, once we do the initial work under the grant and the $80,000 appropriation, what's the shelf life of the result? Is it that bike path, the result of the design and whatever else work we do? If we decide we're not gonna fund this for whatever reason as a community, the construction of $3 million in FY '21, what's the shelf life of the design work and that the grant paid for?
Well, the order of conditions to the Concom would be what the shelf life would be. If there was need to go back to the Concom because the order of conditions was stale, and just, you go past your 3 year.
You have to keep it alive.
So, through an extension of the permit?
Mhm.
So, okay, so let me ask it a different way. Say this gets approved, it's recommended, the grant's taken in, and we do the work for design. How long can we push this out without losing that money? Is it, acknowledging that we need to continue any permits? 3 years?
I'd be speculating, but yeah, I would say so.
Okay, I just want to understand what our sunk cost would be if for some reason something comes up and this doesn't come to fruition. It's $80,000, so in the big picture, it's not a lot of money, but I think it's good for us to have a understanding of how these things work in general.
Yeah.
And then, the last question, I think, will be for Brian. I don't know who in the past, we've taken a request that has a grant, and we've included the total number as the FY request number. So I just want to have him address that.
It might be different because we already have this grant. I know we've
Okay.
done that in the past when we're awaiting grant funding and we're not sure if it's been approved yet. This may be different because we know that we do have this money, but we can double check. with
Super,
them.
yeah, let's just pin that down, we'll have it in our numbers.
Just to
Robin
add to
and
that,
Libby.
one thing we did last year was, we listed out all transportation projects, county, federal, state funding, and sort of, just so people could get a bigger picture of all that's going on, not just the stuff that's being funded locally. So I think that would be a great place to show that as well.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, thank you. Libby?
Has there been a right-of-way analysis or a survey of Walnut Road?
No.
Okay. My understanding is that it's a very narrow right-of-way, so I don't know if takings have been working to any of this, whether they're permanent or temporary. But
Yeah,
it sounds like there's gonna need to be some.
Yeah, that probably would be a supplemental ask once that's quantified. Right now, we just don't know.
Yeah, so that could be significant depending on what property needs to be taken.
So that would be part of, the right-of-way analysis will be part of the design process, and then.
As well the environmental for the wetlands. So right-of-way environmental are a huge driver into this
Okay.
project.
And endangered species?
that's something else that needs to be quantified.
But what about the endangered bike rider? That's the catch. This is good for us if we can figure out how to do this without it being, like what he's saying.
Mhm.
You know, there's gotta be a way for the people to donate some easements. We get them to donate them on Ocklawaha, we can't get them to donate them out there.
Oh, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we should be able to, you know? Not that many property owners, and zoning is huge.
Big lots out there too.
Yeah. You know?
It definitely would be helpful. Mike, we're gonna jump back, and Rob, we're gonna jump back now to Newtown Road and continue on our regular scheduled journey through this list.
That's good, yeah.
There is a map in your packet for this project and some math showing where the requested amount is coming from. The total ask on this is 1.1 million and change. That includes construction and design. Construction does include a path, well, rebuilding of the roadway and adding at least a 5-foot path and perhaps as wide as 10-foot path along the north side of the road. It also includes traffic calming with what we talked about, traffic safety, including speed cushions. There's an image here of temporary rubber speed cushions, so you get what the profile looks like. But these would be asphalt if this is the traffic calming element
That's what
there.
we've been doing.
It's a speed hump that's very traditional. You see on York Street and some other areas, except there's notches cut out for an emergency vehicle to straddle the center line and not, mount the speed hump. So it improves emergency vehicle access. That's what this is designed to accommodate. But it does include the cost of those speed cushions, along with curbing between the path and the roadway. And as I mentioned, includes design as well. We don't anticipate any right-of-way acquisitions as part of this project.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns? Peter?
Any additional street lighting on that road? I mean, I live over there and it's pretty dark at night. There's one or two pretty dispersed pretty far apart. I don't know, just something to think about if you're looking at making changes. Sometimes. I mean, depends on where you are, but
Yeah.
right near the police station, it might be okay. Yeah.
If there's a request for a particular street lamp and you have a utility pole that you may think it'd be appropriate to fix too, that's something we
Yeah,
can look at
outside of
traffic safety and we can just go through the town select board on
Okay.
getting that approval.
Just a
and
thought.
request of National Grid.
Anyone? Peter?
And like this obviously evolves from the solutions on all the stuff, right?
Mhm. Correct. There, like a red outline of a path coming down Old South Road along the, I'm gonna say north or west side of Fairgrounds Road. Correct. This would provide a path on both sides of the road. This would, the intent of that is to link the bus pull off. It's at that location to provide better access for everybody and link to this sidewalk system on Newtown Road.
Thank you.
Libby, and then Jason?
I just want to mention, we might be gonna be saying the same thing, but this is a not really very well signed citizen request came to the board last year for a sidewalk on Newtown Road, but also in the board's strategic planning discussions, they have asked that we emphasize a connection, pedestrian and bike, from the Six Fairgrounds site to the downtown, and this is really, I think, been identified as the initial, one of the links that we would want to work on to have a continuous sort of, safe
Safe way.
pathway down to downtown, so that's another.
I just wanted to add in on Peter's comments about street lighting. There's no necessarily policy out here. Maybe there is a policy that's needed, but what DPW is reporting to people if they call for a requested new street light is to basically go it alone as a private street light, where if you wanted something outside of your home on a pole that existed, that you would pay for that new light and the cost to operate it. Fairly standard, because this actually moves out there right now. Wisconsin is strongly considering going dark sky, eliminating all lights in town, and moving more towards personal responsibility for lighting, whether it's on your bike as required by law, or otherwise, walking your dog with a flashlight. And so there's lots of discussion about street lighting. I would say we're not planning on adding any new streetlights, but with the energy coordinator and coordinating with National Grid, as we start to look at street light replacements, we're looking to go LED. It's a different type of lighting. So we're trying to get the same style and I'll get it wrong, but the color of the lighting. But at the same time, I'm not doing it. It's a very capable hands of Lawrence Sinatra. That it's being looked at.
Yeah,
Is
okay.
the easiest way to say it. And we're not looking to necessarily add, but as we go through and do LED upgrades and change-outs, you should see, let's say, slightly different lighting values.
Okay.
Jason, did Libby address your
Yeah.
comment? Okay, great. Peter?
No, I was gonna ask Peter, was your concern safety, or is it, does sidewalk help?
A little bit of everything, you know, I mean, dark street, cars flying up and down at night, I walk my dog there often, I mean, he has an LED collar, I usually have a headlamp, you know, but I mean, it's,
LED collar.
I think growing up, you know, you just saw more
It's a
street lights
Yeah.
here, and so it's just, you know, any other roads I've lived on seem to have more, and there's one or two, and then big dark spots in between them. But, I mean, not much of a concern, just a thought more than anything.
Mike, Rob, Libby, we're doing sidewalk work there. Where are we with, how's the width on that road once the sidewalk's put in for emergency vehicles? New fire station's gonna go in, they're gonna be
That's right.
traversing that road quite a bit. It's a great way to get to the other side of the island. Are we good with widths, you think? And if not, or regardless, where does Newtown Road itself fit into pavement refurbishment improvements on a schedule? Is it on the radar? Is it not on the radar?
The cost of this assumes that rebuilding the road along with the sidewalk
Full road.
and adding curbing between the path and the roadway,
And
Okay.
speed,
and the traffic calming speed cushions.
And then I'd just like to point out one other thing on that. Your southwestern corner, which is at the Hooper Farm intersection, and I don't know how far you want to get into it, but if we're going to be investing in this area, that's a hard corner to make with any other than a very small vehicle, especially if someone's.
Sloping it down a little bit.
Well, yeah, it might be that we just address the curb so you can turn over the curb.
Yeah.
Or it may be something else, but I would just ask that if we're gonna go through the work, that we consider that as kind of a,
I think I know.
Is that
the
your
owner.
property? That's your property.
Well, that-
I know the owner.
Yeah.
that's
Covering
your,
the driveway.
that's
But
right.
I think-
I hit it out every single time.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a mistake.
All right,
Yeah, this
Fine,
project
just to look
includes
at.
the taking.
Yeah.
of that area?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
All
It's
in
not a big
favor?
request.
This is good.
Especially if there's a fire engine going on there.
Yeah, just if you're trying to get back to the
Yeah.
fire station, you
Yeah.
can't make that corner.
Yep.
If you're in a truck, if you're in anything like an SUV. Okay, great. Any other questions on the Newtown Road? Excellent. Sidewalk improvement program?
Yes. So, last year, I respectfully declined including money in sidewalks, simply because the town had been so giving in years prior. There was funding levels, I think, that were on the books for like 1.5. There was an initial 1 and then a supplemental 5. So we wanted to sort of crawl before we walk and walk before we run, and certainly give you folks an understanding of what we're capable of before we really got cranking. So we've seen what we've been able to accomplish. We've burned through $500,000 specific to the sidewalk improvements that were originally planned, and we've spent almost equal that on the South Beach fiasco. So I think we're definitely at the ability to do at least $1 million a year. I think that's the ask, is to be able to recognize what we were able to put through, and the figure that Mike has put together has actually been updated. We could send you that as well, which kind of indicates we're currently undertaking what has recently been completed and sort of what's in the plans currently. There was a nice op-ed piece today that talks about the history of this sidewalk improvement program. I would encourage everyone to read it. That basically says, you know, it's a collection of people that have been here for decades, looking at the sidewalks, asking for improvements, and telling planning and DPW and roads and right-of-way where these improvements should take place. So this is, you know, this is something that we're thankfully able to execute, but it's a plan that's come together through the decades and with a lot of people that have truly understood what's needed and where.
Great, thank you. Questions, comments, Peter?
Just a comment, I applaud both groups when they met together on any of the projects downtown. I think it pulled the community together and got some thoughts on the table. And just to see the implementation of these sidewalks is phenomenal. Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that. It's been great to see the list be activated on Rut Row, Roads and Rights of Way. It's been a longstanding project, and to see it coming into fruition at more than a trickle is, you know, you're on it and you're doing a great job. We all appreciate that. I would like to ask two things. One is that we get a updated, a map is great. It's probably much easier than a list, but for the FY20, what you're looking to do. And then just from the other side of it, the community outreach end, this isn't an official request, but I would ask that, and I think you might be doing this, Rob, is I know you're reaching out to people and you're walking through and you're looking at this, you're getting to different stakeholders involved, but if per chance the HDC chair were pulled into the any of the sensitive in areas within the historic district, if there's going to be something that's a material change, it might benefit you all just to get some involvement there, so it's not a constant source of friction.
So I would say, at least from our perspective, there has definitely not been a constant source of friction.
You don't sit next to me at the HDC.
I will say that the chair attended our public information session for Main Street up at the Hadwin House. The HCC administrator did as well. We had input from the Preservation Trust. Michael May sat in, and a lot of individuals that own property along Main Street. So we definitely, you know, it's not just helpful to get their input, but it's something that I would expect on particularly the core and thereafter. We did get feedback from what I would say is probably the most sensitive area in anything we've accomplished so far, which was the Macy Warehouse project.
Yeah.
And frankly, the only comment that came out of HDC was the width of the mortar between the stones. And for the most part, if that's good that we're taking that lesson learned forward. But considering what I would consider a dramatic change to the front of that property, but doing it in a way that is respectful of really everything there, the trees, the stones, the general look, the accomplished widening, and at the same time, the secondary and more personal to the property owner, providing ADA accessibility to that structure. I mean, to be able to hit all of these things and get them done was a massive accomplishment.
Yeah, and I don't question that. Just the personal experience with it is, based on your comment, is that all of the discussion around that particular project didn't filter back to you. I think the fact that you are working with the different constituents and the HCCs involved, as you just mentioned, with this most recent project and future projects will make a big difference, and I applaud you for being on it, getting done what you got done, and you know, we're moving forward. We're a community, we're learning, we're growing together. Christy?
Rob, are there any cases where the future phases of sidewalk are in worse shape than the current phases being worked on? Because I'm
Upper
looking
Main
at
Street.
Upper Main Street.
Yeah. That's
No.
why, so just to let you know, so I've taken Upper Main Street out of sequence because it is deplorable. And in my opinion, by the time we got up to the 3 bricks in Pleasant Street, it would be 10 years. So we really, I noticed that and said, you know, I noticed that during my interview here.
Right.
So this is beautiful. All these people spend countless millions on the properties, and now they're spending more millions keeping them up and really making this whole corridor, particularly Upper Main Street, just such a showpiece. And you got crap for the town's right of way, right? The sidewalks and the cobblestone roads are just in such deplorable condition. So that's what really drove me to take this out of sequence and start up there. Look, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I get that, but doing the outreach and letting folks know that we have 2 completely separate goals, totally different goals. Downtown, there's widening going on to accommodate the volume coming off the boats and then dispersing. Getting to these transportation centers, being able to really navigate through town now with higher volumes of tourism. Upper Main Street we're taking a very different approach. That is literally lifting the old materials, improving the foundations,
Yes.
and putting the materials back.
So, because I know some houses have different material in the front,
Yeah.
different
That's all
Gotta
surfacing.
stay, it's
All
gotta
stay.
stay.
Good as now.
It's all
You
staying.
gotta keep,
Everything's staying.
you gotta stop, we gotta give them a crumb.
Sure.
Well, I'm
But-
talking about, I'm not talking about the property owners,
but-
I'm talking about the people that write letters.
My point is
Gotta
that.
give 'em a crumb.
But people need to,
Or 2.
and this is another opportunity for me to make sure the message is out there. Like,
Yeah.
Emphasize it.
I've made sure that everyone understands, this is not DPW, this is not planning, imposing our will
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
of the
Sure.
town. This is simply improving surfaces.
Yeah.
Making them safe, and where we can, making them accessible.
It's my fault.
And someday, if somebody reports us to the ADA, or something happens, at least we can say we're improving it a little at a time and not doing nothing. Because it's gonna look different now, a lot
I
of the
think
stuff
there's
is
plenty of
better.
examples.
The club car thing, I just wanna give you something to think about, I know this isn't the right place to do it, but I can't help it because we're talking about it. So those stone curbs, the stone ones, not the granite, you know those like weird roundy stone things? Save them and reuse them somewhere, make people happy. Don't let those things go somewhere.
That's what they're doing.
You're keeping that in the yard.
Gotta use those stone curbs that like you're taking them out at club car. For whatever reason, I'm
Yeah,
not
so
I'm
I'll
not
let-
complaining about
yeah, yeah,
that,
no,
but
they're
those
going-
are everywhere in places that don't have vehicles driving on them. They're good to use because they look
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
It's a way
I
to
like
sort of
to
say,
say that.
well, we put a new curb here, but we're using the old stuff from here and putting it over
Yeah.
here.
So.
That's
yeah.
what I mean.
So we're using the bluestone there on Upper Main Street.
That's whatever that
Because
stuff
this
is.
stuff on Upper
I
Main Street.
call it stone curbing.
There's gaps, it's bluestone, there's gaps in Upper Main Street that have been filled with concrete, right? And
Yeah.
again, with all due respect to everybody involved,
There's some crazy
people
stuff.
get very sensitive to what's historic.
Yeah.
And you go up and you show them, there's countless examples of things that
Yeah.
repairs that have
Not,
been made.
that's
that are
right.
not-
There's a big one on
not
Milk
close.
Street.
So being
across from
sensitive
the
to
Hinchman
that,
House.
what we're saying is that
Terrible.
there's materials that are being collected now
Yeah.
that we will be reusing in those, let's say, far more sensitive and,
Good. That's the most important thing, Rob. That way you have ammo when someone says, why'd you put a new piece of curb in town?
Yep.
Then you know what? It's just like moving buildings. Back 100 years ago, they were moving buildings and floating them across the harbor. Well, we're floating some curbing up this Main Street.
I'm gonna break-
that's what you gotta do.
I'm
That's
gonna
good.
break out the egg timer.
thank
Um,
you. I have been
never talk
listening
as
to
much
you
as
now.
you.
No, but I'm just trying to keep us on point so we get through it. You're making
He's
good.
doing a good job.
You're making
It's
good
just
points now.
Trying to help.
You're making good points and you're talking about stuff that's important. I just want us to get through our list.
All right.
Next
So-
year, I'm just gonna ask for ammo and crumbs.
Yeah, that's
Croutons.
All right, so we're gonna move our ammo and crumbs over to Surfside area. Road reconstruction.
This is the second phase?
Correct, and
What page is this? So I don't have to keep looking.
One of two.
it should be the next project.
Next one.
It is the next.
Is it?
It's about halfway through the middle towards the back border of the third end of the packet.
So let's go.
No.
There's no page on it.
Oh, there
46
is?
pages.
All right, so you do have the project area map. It shows all of Lover's Lane from Boulevard to Old South Road, and then the other two roadways, Orkawa and Monahans, from Lover's Lane to essentially the driveway of the airport, the entrance driveway of the airport. There was some corrections to the length of this project and some adjustments to, I guess, with whether we, having a bike path and those kind of questions got answered. So this includes those adjustments for the construction costs. The bottom line here, the math doesn't really show it well in the pricing sheet, but this does assume the crediting of the $531,800 from FY19. That's subtracted from the total, the revised design cost of $882. So it includes all of the $6 million for construction, and then the supplemental design of $294,022. So that gets you the total ask of $6,294,022.
Mhm. Questions, comments?
Mike, you got Lover's Lane here.
Yeah, so we're looking at all of Lover's Lane?
1890. County Road, 1890, right?
Correct.
Drainage, you ready to field all the crazy questions? And there's jetties over there, there's homemade
It's well underway.
pump stations,
Yeah.
okay.
Come to one of the meetings.
I haven't been to any of those, I'm just making sure we're good. You talked to, what's his name, Ack Air guy?
We're getting there.
Because he's,
Yeah, we're pursuing,
he thinks I'm the mayor, he keeps calling me and I can't do a thing to really help him.
You're calling.
And he just blames Richmond like everybody
That
else.
sounds like a mayor.
there's plenty of,
Crazy.
yeah, there's plenty of opportunities. The next meeting is the 10-4
Beautiful.
at 6FG. 6FG.
Yeah, I'm excited about this.
We're
It's just-
assigning you our
it's
representative
just-
for an update.
You already got me on the other committee on that today. So you worked with some of these people along Lovers, Rob, and talked about the water
I have,
issues?
yes.
This is great.
Yep.
Okay, great.
I just have Mike, a layout question. So you're talking 2 11-foot lanes and an 8-foot wide path. What's the width of that road there? 50-foot right away?
The layout?
Yeah.
Orkawa's
Lover's
way.
Lane is different than Orkawa and
Yeah.
Monahans. I think Orkawa and Monahans are both 40-foot, and
Yeah.
then Lover's Lane is 60-foot.
So some roads will have one 11-foot lane. The way it's written up, I'm reading it, is that both areas on the map will have 2 11-foot lanes and a minimal 8-foot wide path.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, we're shooting for 10-foot path, actually.
On Lovers.
No, we're doing
Aqua too?
10 foot MUPs, MUPs everywhere. I mean, unless there's,
Right away.
not right away, unless there's environmental issues that
Environmental.
restricts us, 10-foot path. Because we're going back, part of the multi-use path improvements that we're looking for 200,000 for is to change all the old original bike paths from 8 feet and update them to 10 for multi-use.
Really? Why couldn't we do Milestone? You got a 150-foot layout, Mike, and we couldn't widen
Yeah.
that 2 feet.
We will.
It's on the list.
My point is that
That's
we're not putting in 8-foot paths anywhere
Yeah, unless you have no
unless we're
choice.
being told to.
Okay, good, because they become 8 by the grass eventually.
So, Mike,
So
can
that's
you
good.
update, or can we update the request to reflect the information that it's a 10-foot, except for if there are environmental standards to meet? Just so we have that.
I'm sorry, yeah, I see where you're getting that from. Yes, that can be corrected.
Okay, thank you.
So we get easements from Aqua owners and the other part of Monahans, Mike?
At some point,
Yeah, and
So-
we're assuming some right-of-way acquisitions in the costing of this.
Okay,
still very early stages discussion. The concept's being developed right now.
okay.
Okay, and then last question, I think, is what, Mike, I don't expect it now, but I'd like you to please get back to us through staff with what's our total funding to date on the project? Or actually, we can probably just get that from you all, through Brian.
As far as
Total funding
just
for
that
the
entire boulevard
one?
area.
Yeah, what we funded, design, and construction today. It's just an informational thing for the background. It doesn't affect the recommendation. This is a phased development. process, I just wanna know what it is, that's all.
What we've spent to date?
Yeah, for the,
Yeah.
do you have,
All we have is we have a contract for a survey and concept.
no, previous improvements out there, we've done previous improvements, there was funding.
Boulevards?
Oh, Boulevard.
Yeah,
Phase
just that
one.
whole package, what the cost was to date. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move on to, please, multi-use path. I just want to give you guys let's take a quick look-see before we do that. It's 11:45, we've got multi-use path, cobblestones, improvements, fairground area roadways, Tom Nevers bike path, decommissioning fire cisterns. We still need to discuss our Rory. So there's gonna get a point where if it doesn't look like we're gonna get everything done, we'll discuss a reschedule for supplemental meeting. I prefer we get through this, but I don't wanna rush anything. I do wanna give you an idea what kind of time we have left. So, please proceed, with the multi-use path maintenance.
Sure. And this, again, Rob mentioned it earlier, that a lot of these programs are trying to widen out paths that are substandard. If they're a 6 foot, 8 foot wide, and we consider them to be bike paths, assuming them to be widened out to 10 feet. There's a lot of paths that, were constructed a long time ago, and with tree roots and some freeze thaw upheaval, they need to be resurfaced. So that's this $500,000 to advance that program. And again, I think that this is going to expand based on vegetation management programs, and it's all meant to be inclusive of and utilize this funding source.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any questions, comments? All right, so that's helpful. Thank you for putting all that information in the packet too. It speeds up review. Cobblestone improvements and maintenance.
So cobblestone improvements are largely going to be focused in downtown, obviously. Just looking to, we broke it out originally so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle of roadway improvements. Cobblestones being a bit different, and certainly the surface of them needs to be addressed in a more strategic way. So last year we broke them out and recognized that it wasn't realistic for cobblestone repairs to actually be teed up for improvement until the sidewalks really were markedly completed. Now that we're starting to complete some of those sidewalk projects, the cobblestones certainly will be able to be attacked. So that's what we're looking for here.
Okay, Mike, just as informational, can you review your project summary for this and update that? Because it's, unless I'm misunderstanding,
for
it's
road
not
maintenance.
jiving. Yeah.
Pavement management, yeah.
Yeah. So that needs to be descriptor changed. Any comments, questions?
Okay, one question.
Peter?
Rob, just like you guys bedded all of the new granite curbs and a concrete substrate, is there any new methodologies of firming up what's beneath the cobble to keep it from
Sure,
degrading?
good question. So what we're, this really came to a head with the early discussions on Upper Main Street for what the cobblestone surface will look like at the end. And just to try to help people understand, the plan is to literally lift the materials, improve the foundation of the road, and then put the materials back. So the plan would be to construct something similar to what we did at South Beach Street for a roadway. It's a brand new, we hogged out all the material. We brought in brand new dense grade sub-base material. We built, I think, 8 inches of pavement, and then we put down stripes. Here, we would build everything just a bit lower to accommodate the stones and likely a stone dust type of cradle material. And so it would be a fully constructed modern roadway system with the proper crown and such, and then you're just topping it with the cobblestones. So the cobblestone look and feel are still going to be there, but they're going to be on an improved surface, and
It's more solid.
it's going to be able to handle the loads of the modern construction equipment and such that are going on.
Okay, thank you.
By all means.
I got a question on that, Rob.
Yes.
So you have some cobblestones that are this big and you have some that are much smaller. So how does that, do you just pile them in? I mean, how do you, each stone's different size. It's not like every stone is the same size like you're doing brick or something like
Understood.
that.
So it
So
goes
how-
into, it
so-
goes into a bed of stone dust. It doesn't sit on a firm surface. It has a surface that's been prepared, but it has a bit of give to be able to seat properly.
Okay.
If you've seen them doing
Yeah.
any manageable, small repairs they've been doing in years past, they'll pull them out, they put down, material, they'll compact a layer, and then they'll put in sort of, less compacted layer,
Mhm.
something that's fairly loose, and start to tamp it, and then, the final tamping is morely putting the stones in, see how they settle, and then, try to make a surface. It's not gonna be easy when you're doing it, and I think it's gonna be easier, on a larger scale. It's challenging when you're doing just small spot
Yeah.
repairs.
All right. Any other questions on the cobblestones? All right.
How you getting neighbor,
Thanks, Nat.
or butters, response on that process?
I would say until people see an example, it's gonna be hard to truly understand. One thing we're planning right now is to try to build an example so that we can see it and maybe have it go through this construction cycle, or I should say this whole winter, until see how it performs this year. So that's something I hope to undertake rather
And-
soon.
Any reconsideration with drainage as being a more, less permeable surface, maybe?
I don't have concerns about
Okay.
the impermeableness of existing cobblestone streets. They run off. I mean, if there's any uptake at all, it's very, very de minimis. It's not like a porous pavement. These surfaces have been driven over for decades.
Right. All right.
So, and part of that, you can see where the surface is really out of whack, the water ponds for days. It does evaporate, and some of it will continue to go in and destabilize that base, but it's not going in to the level of a porous pavement, which is what people are, I think some people are talking about.
Okay.
Thanks. We're gonna jump over to, down to Fairgrounds area roadways. This many pages from the back.
Mr. Chairman, this is just to build off of last year's request and appropriation of approximately $1.3 million. This is a $1.5 million and includes the construction of driveway improvements to the two fairgrounds parking lot. It's separate from the parking lot work, but it also includes $1 million in anticipated utility costs for providing utilities along the proposed Wade Drive area. And again, this should include the universal costs that are associated with this project. Again, building off of last year's request.
Okay, thank you. Everybody have a chance, there's some good information in the packet. Any questions, comments? Okay. Good. We're gonna move to Tom Nevers Bike Path. So we did while we're in it.
There is a map of this corridor. It includes the entire, not a phased approach, but the entire corridor of Tom Nevers Road from Milestone Road all the way to the end. This, it's about 1,100 linear feet. We do have an assumed cost for construction of about $200 a foot. That's roughly the linear foot cost of previous bike paths, of just the bike path work, not any roadway work, and some modest drainage improvements. Looking at a 15% total cost for design, that's where we get the $332,000 for just design. Once the project's surveyed and we've quantified exactly what the If there are any right-of-way impacts, there's been some easements that have already historically been donated by abutters, but there are some pockets of acquisitions that will be necessary. Once that's better understood, we can come back and seek supplemental funding if necessary, as well as a more refined construction cost. But this is to get the project started, as has been I guess, the preference of the neighborhoods who have wanted to see this project prioritized.
I just want to add to that and say, this is going to be another example of a different project management approach where we've applied the same to Lover's Lane and the Surfside area projects. In the past, the projects have been let as lump sums for the entire design of the project, and without knowing what the project is going to shake out to be. So we're reining that in. So the Lover's Lane, Okawa, Monte Hanson project I mentioned earlier, the only thing we've spent to date is survey and a concept. So we've been able to do that at a market discount from what we've been paying in the past, when we don't really have a true understanding of the overall total cost. We ended up getting into historically some change orders that probably could have been avoided had we taken a different approach. So I think Mike and I, working together with Brian, have really adopted this approach as something that I think is going to help us make our design dollars far more effective.
Thanks for that. I think we all, it's good information. I think we all applaud the shift. Thank you. Questions, comments on the project itself? And just,
I got a quick question.
yeah, Chrissy?
I'm just curious, I know, Mike, you've been doing this for a long time. You know, when you have spent design dollars, do you get a lot of good new ideas that you didn't think about? Or is design all stuff that you basically know how the design's gonna be?
And Rob can tell you too, there are standards you follow, but you know, these types of modifications, I guess, that come out of, I guess, coordinating with the butters, landscaping treatments, rest areas and stuff like that, it all comes through the design process. If we need to incorporate some kind of rest area along the way here because that's what's being asked for by some of the abutters, or it just seems like a good idea to do that, then we can incorporate that in. If there's anything other that's specific about changes or deviations from standards, I think that's all reviewed on you know, as they come up, but for the most part, it's very standardized.
Yeah.
I would add to that and just say that in my mind, the most effective use of the tax dollar is the earliest stages of the project, the conceptual phase, where that design money is limited. What you're gaining in design is from the public, is the abutters, is the people that use those areas and that know those areas at the back of their hands. Even if they're opposed to the project, if you're able to glean from those interactions and from those public information sessions, what's most important to them, where the drainage spots are, where the problems are that exist, those are the key components that help designers, the engineers, the planners, go back to the drawing table and actually design improvements. Blind to that, we come in with a concept or a final design and hand it to a contractor to come build. I mean, you can build anything.
Yeah.
And you can pull anything out of a book and just apply it over a corridor and call it a day. It's when people see the ended product and say, there's no longer water coming onto my property and flooding my basement. I no longer have to track, mud and dirt into the house. I can now open up the windows and I don't have dust coming into the house anymore. Those sort of things. Or we don't have people leaving the road and coming into my yard anymore. Basic things that you would expect. Now it's,
all right.
So there's no easy answer, but I think it's a lot of the things that we've been able to incorporate in the past year or so, mostly involving public input.
How's mitigating issues when the project's done too, I'm presuming? Yeah.
I think it's important also to develop those relationships early on so that the abutters recognize the benefits and that you're trying to work hard to minimize impacts to their properties. I think we're more apt to get takings given, donated, as opposed to paying large sums towards the project cost if they are perceived as unfriendly.
Yeah, all right.
Great.
Good answer.
Thanks, Rob, that's helpful,
Yep.
get your philosophy and how you approach that stuff. Good question, Chrissy. Just the last on that, so the FY '20 is gonna have design, is that, I presume that's, but I wanna ask the question, include the rights of way and environmental analysis?
I think this is to at least start the design process and then quantify what those right-of-way impacts are, what the environmental
Yeah.
surveys show. We don't really know if there's anything that needs to be mitigated, so it hasn't been, those types of.
Yeah,
costs-
no, not cost to mitigate, but we're gonna, that's, the upfront cost is gonna analyze what's involved, environmental and,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
we'll
Just
see what
want-
triggers, and if there are laws or,
Right.
easements that need to be sorted out, then we'll sort it out.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Decommissioning the fire cisterns?
So this was a can that got kicked down the road that we'd like to collect and fill in. We have a number of these that still exist. When they do come up, we basically have to fill them out of our operating budget. I'd like to go out and proactively fill them in so that we don't have to deal with the unforeseen issues that arise. The ones that we do know, we can address. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks. Richard?
Is the ask 60 or 100?
Since we've brought on and discussed this, we thought we'd correct it and have it go to round up to 100,000.
Number seems to go down. FY '21 and FY '22, are there request numbers? They're not showing properly in our worksheet. I don't see any on the SIP request form,
Okay.
but I just see indicating there's a field error here that typically states that the number is too large to fit in the field.
Right.
So I was curious, but you're not anticipating any out year?
There was some out year, I think, just to make sure that we got them all. I would say, right now, I'm familiar with at least 5 that need to be filled. So I would say, right now, we're not planning for out year, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, and then just to follow up on that for you guys on your sheets, on our, where?
Second page.
Oh, okay, I didn't see it there. So if you want, on our Planet sheet, the FY '20 is 100,000, page 2, backside. FY '21 and FY '22 are $70,000 and $60,000 respectively, and if you want to update it on your spreadsheet, and we'll fix that.
Yeah, I can update those.
Okay, great, thank you. Christie and then Peter?
Bob, are these all on roadways?
The ones I'm aware of, yes.
Yeah. Are they any of the roads that are being considered for soon to be repaved or any road work?
Nothing in the 20 budget, no. There are some things that are, I know there's one out in front of Pacific Club, so it's part of sidewalk. Like, I definitely want to get that done before that work gets done.
Is there any historical interest to,
Of mine?
no.
Retaining them?
Of anyone's, of retaining one or something like that? I don't know, I'm asking if there was any interest
3D laser
from
scans we
anyone.
can put in a museum
Yeah.
somewhere.
I think,
You could say no, and I'll be
I
content.
haven't heard of any,
Okay.
but I'm glad, that-
Liabilities.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna encourage any.
I'll be glad to ask before we button these up.
Just was curious.
Let's say this,
Actually, a good
Anyways.
when
Interested.
we found one on the sidewalk in India Street, opposite Black Eyed Susan's, that's India
Yeah.
Street?
Yep.
It's just a very quick story, sorry to take up
Please,
time.
no.
2 bricks had sort of settled in, and we got a phone call that it was unacceptably out of whack. So we went up and checked it out, and we asked the individual there to, he said he heard something weird. So we asked him to take the tape measure out and to measure the hole. He said, I'll never forget this, because Chuck, my deputy director at the time, came in the office and he said, someone just put a tape measure down a hole in the sidewalk and emptied the tape measure. 25 feet. And it didn't hit the bottom. I said, okay, where are we going? And here we go. So we got out there, and sure enough, it was an old well.
Wow.
In the sidewalk, and there's no record on any plans that we could find, and no one owned it, so we ended up having to deal with it. And all I could think of was going up to Black Eyed Susan's and all the people that,
There's always people waiting
on the
there.
sidewalks,
Yeah.
both sides when it's really busy, you know, and some little kid just disappearing.
Oh, yeah, that's scary. Rob, just a question on the historical side of it. What are you guys using, where have you developed the list of these to fill in? What's your information source? Is it just anecdotal or in the field, or?
I think fire department records, then we had gone out and verified a few of them. Some are, I think, they're there, but they're buried.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of scheduling so that we can uncover them and fill them in.
And not that anyone has time for this, but I believe I've seen a fire cistern in the key notation in the Sanborn maps that the Nantucket Historical Association.
They're online too, I think.
It was the Sanborn fire insurance, so they would want to know where those were. So that may be helpful if, you know, somebody's got nothing to do on a Sunday.
Ironically, I was on that yesterday.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There are none by the yacht club, right?
Okay, great. Any other questions on that?
Is this
Peter?
like the one that exposed itself on Main Street last year in front of Pacific National? Wasn't there one that
Yeah.
opened up in the middle of the road? It was like a big deal, a couple years ago,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And what do you guys fill these with?
With concrete.
Concrete?
Yeah.
And is that about $1,000 for one, or 100,000 for one, for two? I mean, depends how big they are, I guess, yeah. So that might cover one, might cover two.
I think it's gonna depend on the size. I think
Right.
each one of these has their own fluctuating size.
Okay.
They're the similar styles, and wherever we can, we'll take a look at alternative products too. I don't like throwing that much concrete
Yeah.
around if we don't have
It's
to.
expensive right now.
Do you scope what's underground before you fill it? I mean, I can understand the utility concrete, you can pull a truck up, pour it in a hole.
Again, sometimes it depends on lots of different things.
Yeah.
Sometimes these actually have filler pipes that still are active. Sometimes they have overflows into storm drain systems. Sometimes they have, you know, I've seen all kinds of things in the past.
Right.
They're not solely unique to here, obviously. They've been all over the place. So-
But they're enclosed, it's an enclosed volume, so when you pour concrete in, you're not pouring it over and around conduit or anything else. We're not making,
No, not that, again,
Hopefully not.
not.
that we know of.
Not that we're aware of.
Okay.
So where some of these are fairly empty, some are full. You know, we look at each one differently.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Anything else on those? All right, we'd like to thank you guys for coming in, presenting this information, and we will follow up with you on the intermodal. And there were some list items that we'll be following up with you through staff on.
Great, thank you.
Okay, guys, so we have just
Oh,
general.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I wanted to take this opportunity to give a very brief update. Our facilities are being ranked, and I need to review that list. And equipment purchases, equipment inventory, we now have a updated list with the born-on dates, origination costs, and replacement year. And I also wanted to let the committee know that it's DPW's intent to move forward with we've done I think all of the fiscal 19 capital equipment purchases except one. That is the bucket truck, the aerial lift. So there was some discussions internal to the department about replacing the bucket truck versus what was presented last year was this new tracked aerial lift.
Mhm.
I would make the argument that it's an aerial lift, is an aerial lift. And we've talked to town bond council, with finance director and with town manager. And the idea back is that they are a one-for-one as far as the approval goes. I had discussions yesterday with Peter about any hesitation on the committee's approach or understanding of what the department is moving forward with. I think we've answered questions that he might have had. We have had, it's been a history within the department of safety issues with the operation of this equipment. I'm well aware of that, and we have taken steps. We've actually had specific training for operators, and we will continue to train on an annual basis, not just in operating the equipment, but also electrical hazard training to continue to raise awareness of things that are dangers out there, both to the equipment, to the staff, and to the public. So I feel confident at this point that moving forward with a bucket truck to replace the capabilities that the department has had in the past is the appropriate way to go. And more than anything, just wanted to share all of that with the committee today.
It's helpful, thank you. We appreciate your following up on this stuff. We really do. Richard?
Just two quick questions. On this sheet,
Yeah.
is capping cells 1A, B, and C 8.2, or is it 14? What's the correct
It's,
number?
it's 8.2 currently, and we're looking at a revised.
We're still waiting
assessment.
for Weston and Sampson.
Yeah, Western Simpson has a
Sampson's
contract right
working
now
on it.
to look into more realistic.
And I want to just point out also, we are going to have, we've scheduled a follow-up meeting on that, and some other items that we didn't have full information on yet, just because it was in development. So
Okay.
that's,
Alright.
we're not, that's
Along
a
the same lines, the
Yeah,
Public
yeah.
Works garage, is that 18 or 21?
Public Works garage is the same thing. We're gonna do that, the capping, and another topic as a November, in our November meeting, November 1st.
Yes.
And what we're gonna try and do is address any open matters in that one meeting, November 1st. But if the list grows and we need more time, we'll do 2 meetings that week, so that we're not, we want to have adequate time, especially these bigger things, these bigger type requests, right? To kind of talk them out, and not only with the department head, but amongst ourselves and town admin. You could, make sense? Okay, just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because now is the time to course correct if we need to. Okay, great. Anything before we let these gentlemen loose? All right, thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, guys.
All right, you other gentlemen, sit tight for a few minutes. It's almost 12:15. We've got,
Thank you.
do you guys want to do a general discussion of these and do the Rory? Do you want to do the Rorys on your own? How do you want to proceed with that?
I make a motion that we do the Rories on our own, because it's a lot here. If we start having only 15 minutes left, I think it would be
Yeah.
not. Thank you.
Okay. I don't, I appreciate, we don't need a formal, but we'll do that.
Do you need a second for that? I'll
No.
second. No.
We're all set with it. I would ask that we take a look at the project list from your, from the summary sheet with respect to the Rory, and just consider whether there may be any questions, if you're looking at that next to the Rory sheet, to see if there's any questions you might have while we're in a group.
What sheet are you referring to?
So take a look at this
Yeah.
sheet, specifically the criteria
Yep.
versus the departmental requests that we just reviewed.
Yep.
And, just take a couple minutes and see if there's something that you want to ask while we're in a group about the Rory. We can do it at a later date, but if we're here, nothing jumps out to me at this point, but I thought.
Perfect. Yep.
And while you guys are doing that, I'll just give you a quick update. Let's see, we'll do date of our next meeting, which is next Thursday, same time, 10:30, but in the community room. Any committee reports at this point? You did not want to comment?
Christine and I met right here, had a great session with Mark, both from a little bit of FinCom standpoint and of course Capcom, and we support what's going on and what's happening, and we like the personality that Mark brings, a newness to some of the problems of yesteryear. We've really differentiated what we consider is, I'm gonna look at Brian when he's on his phone, to kind of remove the thought and need that we have to collect retained earnings to get capital projects, that we want to make sure that the capital projects that are needed come before this committee and not go the route of squirreling away, in a sense, retained earnings. And I believe, and I don't want to speak for Christie, but I believe that Mark embraces that. And I think that bodes well for this committee, that this committee will see all of these capital requests instead of going a different route.
Mm-hmm. That's good, that's good information.
No, it's good. You know, you've got a workman behind the reins, so it's nice.
Yeah.
He's, you know, he's been out in the field and you know, has a good sense of it. And as Peter said, just a good approach. Yeah.
It's like sewer.
Yeah.
Good.
Amen.
And but I think he's also he's learning along the way and picking up info. So he's a good
And
guy.
it's good too, I think, because he still has a kind of a bench, you know, there's still a coach. You know, Chris Pikus is still around, and I'm sure he's in touch with Rob, so it's helpful to have that in addition to his own information and knowledge. So that's good. Thank you for that update. Anyone else? No committee? We're gonna do sewer pretty soon. As it draws closer, one of us, I'll touch base with Dave and just have him schedule it.
Figure out when.
Yeah, just a reminder.
Yep.
Who has not met, is there anyone who has not met with their department liaisons other than sewer? No, not who's here? Okay. Just on the good of the order, and then we're gonna cut out of here a few minutes
Before we
early.
do that,
Oh, Richard,
This
please.
is missing decommissioning fire system.
It just,
Oh.
it doubled up on Surfside area road construction.
sorry
The
about
second
that.
one should be, the last column should be
Yep,
decommissioning.
it should be, sorry.
We can just change it and send the Excel version and then they can input on that.
I'd actually ask, can you, yeah, that would be great, but it would be really helpful if you were to, in the
Numbers and
future,
amounts.
pardon me?
Numbers and amounts, like we were talking?
Yeah, a couple things.
Yeah.
We're gonna shift right into good of the order so we can then go to adjournment. So, on that topic, if, and we'll do this in the database, but if we could put the dollar amount on the Rory at the top, under the project.
It gets a little tight in this format. It doesn't really wanna put everything in there, but I will try to finagle it.
Okay, and it's not so much that we're having you do it at this point, because the Rory is
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be coming out, the online version. So it's more that there's a field spanning these two columns that gives us a number for the current year request. I think it'd just be helpful for the members. The other is that if you could please make it a part of our normal process to include the small version in the packet, but to bring the large version to the table until we actually have the online input form. And then the same with the worksheet. And also, if you could, once we get this finalized, there's some formatting changes I'm gonna mention in a
Yep.
moment. We'll email this out to the individual members, so you have this to be working through if you want, making your own notes, analyzing, whatever it is you wanna do. Along the lines of format changes, I wanna follow up to a discussion that came up at the last meeting, and then Christie, I'll hit you. A couple things are gonna be that we're gonna include some, I met with Brian and we discussed how to address the capital item request naming, the nomenclature there with, how does that work with, is it a new request? Or more importantly, we should always assume it's a new request unless there are gonna be three columns. One will be whether it's phased, one will be whether it's annual recurrent, and one will be whether it's supplemental. So that we know if it's in there from with a previous year number, we know it's a previous year request, and then we look to the column to indicate what the other circumstances are. And that will help us to clean up both our understanding of the numbering, but it'll also help us clean up the descriptors where we have new in parentheses, and we can make it a little bit simpler for ourselves. So those were the two there, the two comments being how we'll be processing the numbers, which is to say they will always be the year of the original request. And then two, what conditions or circumstances apply. And then what will happen with that in the project management side of it in the database is that we'll actually be able to, right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a situation where if it's a supplement, a phased, or a recurring annually, it will, when a department head puts it in their form, it will spawn a child for all the information that's required for that. So then it reports back so that there's a total for instance, if we're talking about the Surfside area roads. And then we're gonna add another column, which will be under costs, which will be total funding to date. So that we will be able to look back just visually at a glance You'll be able to feel the record from left to right and have all the information you'd want. If we need more information on what the breakdown of the total funding was, we can request that individually, we can get a spreadsheet report, we can make that part of our process, that we get a separate report, supplement to the packet, maybe once all the information is in the database for the SIP request forms, so that we're not keep getting new packets and new packets of that information, but it could basically be a report that says, these are broken down by category, department and category, phase, supplemental, annual recurring, and what the previous year requests were on a year-by-year basis, maybe a few years back. I don't know that we'll need it, but that's always gonna be available to us through this database we're developing. Peter, I'm sorry, Christie actually was waiting in the
No, I just, I was gonna see if there's any way on the SIP request form that we could, in that first block, is there any way we could just show the project cost?
Yes, that was the other area.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then also, I noticed that on some of these, the submittal date is 2017. I just wanna make sure that specifically the road improvements, and then the multi-use path maintenance. So I just wanna make sure that they're, and if they're re-upping them, then.
Right, so-
I don't know if it's phased, but I just wanna know that I'm looking at a current.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense, and that's what the discussion was, that's what spawned the discussion last week, is what does that number really mean? So when we add the columns for phase, supplemental, and annual recurrent, or recurring annually, that will then fill out, if it's a 17, if it's a capital request dated 17, what that is telling us is what department and what year that request came in. And then the columns that are checked will tell us whether it's phased
Got it.
or
Okay.
recurring or supplement.
Fair enough.
Anything else on the formatting and kind of go to the order stuff in that regard?
I think the only other thing that I have was to possibly move the summary information from the back of the packet more towards the front.
Oh,
Just-
thank you, yeah.
Right, I mean, I don't know how you guys all feel, but it seems a little bit more appropriate to be able to see kind of what we're gonna look at
Okay.
before just
Yeah.
jumping into request
Yep.
forms one by one.
Yep.
Just a simple one
Mhm.
for.
Well, it's especially good too, if it's coming pre-stapled and we want to keep everything together, we don't have to, like I tear mine out and then I put it in front of
Or
me.
yeah, even on the PDF though, if you're just scrolling.
It'd be
through,
nice
it's
to have it in the
a
front.
rundown of
Yeah.
10, 15, 20, is it $30 million or $3 million?
Totally with
That's a
you.
snapshot.
Yeah.
Totally with it.
Usually.
Okay, so we get the snapshot up front.
Easy, easy stuff.
And the Roy, I would just suggest, in interleaving these, the planet, maybe the summary sheet, the planet sheet, and then the Rory sheet up front, and then sequentially the SIP request forms. Are you gonna be doing the odd even thing or no? Do you think you'll continue that?
I tried. Adobe was not cooperating with me. I
Okay.
can talk to our IT department and see what the deal is.
Don't
but
worry
it's
about
not-
it. I'll do it myself and I'll forward it to you for printing.
Yeah, it's,
I just,
What is it?
I just, so that the agenda is its own document, and the SIP request forms are their own, they start on an odd page, so they print on the face. It's just easier for me when I'm trying to assess and then try and facilitate the meeting to have it work that way. I'll take care of it myself, it's not an issue, I just wanted to ask so I knew if I should be doing it. Richard?
Just a dumb question. I'm back to this spreadsheet, the paving projects.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at fiscal year 18, and 2 of those projects apparently were done.
Yeah.
I think we funded them at $1 million. Is that correct?
Which projects I don't?
I'm sorry.
We,
Two projects.
while you're looking it up, my understanding.
Here's my question.
Yeah, what's your question?
Why are we looking at, if the number was 1.0 million in fiscal year 2018, why are we looking at 3.581?
So where,
It's a revised, realistic,
yeah,
So we funded down in 19, the original number, are you talking about annual paving?
yeah.
Okay, so when the DPW director submitted the revised, re-looked at DPW request, that was 3.8 or 3.5 million annually every year.
Okay.
Okay, for island-wide road paving,
Got it.
okay?
Yeah.
We, with all the capital requests, the town manager made the decision that we can't fund that at $4 million, so We
Okay.
funded $1 million last year. He's kept the same number request all along, and we'll obviously, the town manager will make a recommendation on what we can do.
All right.
But what we've requested is a list, thank you.
Right.
What we've requested of Rob, which we're gonna get towards the end of the year, is a list updated to reflect, instead of this running list as you see it,
Yep.
with this number
Yep.
of 3.5 or thereabouts,
Yep.
what actually happened in FY '18, what's on the schedule for '19, and what's your intended list for '20.
Okay, and we can't get that until
We,
January.
we can't get it because part of how that is done is there's a index, there's an inventory of, an updated inventory field assessment to update the index to rank each of those projects. So that work doesn't get done until they hire the individual to do it, and that will be in October with a completion sometime before the end of the year, which gets us the report by January. Any other, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry for extending the meeting.
No?
No, I'd like to make an observation that we spent $6 million and a lot of comment has actually made time to discuss.
I feel
And,
like being in a building that costs $6 million.
It's all right. That's a neutral response.
Yeah, that's a neutral response.
You walk nice, you know, I
Richard, we
mean-
do it every day.
Yeah, every day. Smaller buildings. So it's 12:26. Can I get a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you, everyone.
Space at this side for $6 million.
Have you been in here? That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't been in here.